6 uur op 'n Sondag aand en ons tyd vir Fokus hier op SABC 2. Goeienaand en baie welkom. Ek is Lenet Francis. Vanaand fokus ons op die uitdagings wat leerders met gestremthede in die gesig staar. Die Fokus skool vir leerders met spesiale behoeftes is gereeld om die verkeerde redes in die nuus. Onderrig, maar ook die sorg van die gestremde kinders in die skool se koshuis in Moddernsane buite Oos-London word dikwels ernstig ontwrig deur personeellede wat staak. Die vinger van beskuldiging wys na die Oos-Kaapse Departement van Onderwys. Regisseur Karen Dorwiel en kamerman Byron Taylor het probeer om die skool te besoek.
Wat het daartoe gelei dat julle ouens hierdie persverklaring uitgereik het?
Die Oos-Kaapse tak van die Raad van en vir mense met gestremthede het in Junie in 'n persverklaring sy kommer uitgespreek oor die gevolge van die jongste arbeidsgeskil by die Fokus skool vir leerders met gestremthede.
Dit was as gevolg van agterstallige oortyd wat nie betaal is nie. En dit strek selfs terug na 2008. Dit is onverklaarbaar waarom het so lank geneem het om die oortydprobleem uit te sorteer.
Die oortydkwessie het in 2015 tot 'n staking van ondersteuningspersoneellede by die skool gelei. En in Maart vanjaar het die personeellede met 'n sloerstaking begin.
Die ondersteuningspersoneel het toe besluit, soos versorgers, die kombuispersoneel, die skoonmakers, selfs die busbestuurders, het toe besluit om vanaf Vrydagmiddag tot op Maandagoggend nie te werk nie.
Kinders van oor die hele Oos-Kaap ontvang onderrig by Fokus, van graad R tot graad 12. Van die 142 leerders woon 85 in die skool se koshuis.
Dit het daai kinders dan alleen gelaat, sonder volwasse toesig vir daai hele tydperk. Daar was wel een van die ouers het sy kind besoek en hy het hom op die grond aangetref, op die vloer aangetref. En dit was vir hom baie traumaties geweest en hy het die kind toe opgetel en in sy rolstoel, hy is 'n rolstoelgebruiker, hom weer terug in die rolstoel gesit. Hulle verskillende vorme van gestremdhede. Dit is cerebraal gestremdes, daar is selfs quadriplee en paraplee, so dis 'n wye verskeidenheid van gestremdhede. So die kinders onder mekaar het later mekaar gehelp ook, ongeag of dit nou na die toiletgeriewe toe was of wat ook al.
Baie van die kinders wat nader aan die skool en nie in die koshuis nie woon, is afhanklik van busse om hulle skool toe en terug huis toe te vat. Busbestuurders het ook aan die onlangse sloerstaking deelgeneem.
Die impak van die kinders wat in die omgewing woon, wat vervoer word elke dag, is later opgelaai. In plaas van 6 uur eers 8 uur, so het 10 uur by die skool gekom en 2 ure se skoolonderrig verloor.
Fokus het onderhoude bevestig gehad met van die ontevrede ouers en ondersteuningspersoneellede. Die ouers en personeellede het egter almal binne 'n paar ure hulle afsprake met Fokus gekanselleer, skynbaar uit vrees vir onder meer towery wat glo die dood van 'n personeellid wat hom vir die regte van werkers beywer het, veroorsaak het.
Ondersteuningspersoneellede is sedert einde Julie weer terug by die skool, maar al hulle oortyd is skynbaar steeds nie betaal nie. Ons span het weer probeer om verduidelikings te kry.
Die sloerstaking het sowat 4 maande geduur. Ondersteuningspersoneel het hulle geld gesoek en ouers antwoorde.
Die bekommerde ouers en 'n groep van die skoolbeheerliggaam, die departement van onderwys en die departement van departement tesourie besoek. En aan die einde van die dag is hulle heen en weer gestuur met geen antwoord aan die einde van die dag nie, behalwe dat daar geen eise of voorleggings gedoen is om die oortyd wel te betaal nie.
Fokus wou met die skole van Fokus praat oor die beweringe dat oortydeise nie by die departement van onderwys ingedien is nie. Die departement het ons versoek geïgnoreer en die skool se hekke wat gewoonlik oop staan, is skielik toegeswaai.
Die departement van onderwys het 'n rol om te speel. Dit is 'n verantwoordelikheid om te kyk dat veral gestremde kinders, dis die mees kwesbare groep in die gemeenskap. Hulle kan oor die algemeen die dinge vir hulle self doen nie en hulle het altyd hulp nodig. So ek dink die departement het nagelaat in daai tydperk.
Fokus wou by die Oos-Kaapse Departement van Onderwys hier in Zwelitsha uitvind hoekom die regte van gestremde kinders skynbaar gereeld die afgelope 10 jaar weens arbeidsgeskille geskend word.
I have to thank you very, very much for allowing us this opportunity. We promise you we'll honor it.
Fokus wag nou al weke lank vir die belofte van 'n Skype-onderhoud. Intussen het die Suid-Afrikaanse Gestremdheidsalliansie 'n brief aan die nasionale minister Angie Motshega geskryf.
Wel dat die probleem nie aandag kry nie en dat dit 'n probleem is wat oor daai tipe van tydperk sloer. Ek kan ook net byvoeg dat ons geen terugvoer gekry het van die nasionale departement oor daai spesifieke brief nie.
Net hierna praat ons oor die probleme en die uitdagings wat leerders met gestremdhede landwyd by skole te bowe moet kom. Bly ingeskakel. Ons het pas gesien en gehoor van die ernstige probleme by die Vukohambe skool vir leerders met spesiale behoeftes in die Oos-Kaap, maar dis nie die enigste skool vir leerders met gestremdhede wat probleme moet oorkom nie. Daar is die kwessie van vervoer van leerdlinge, woonplek, want nie almal kan in koshuise woon nie, en dikwels sê die meeste ouers dit boonop nie te breed nie. Om talle ander probleme te bespreek wat leerders met gestremdhede moet introduseer, praat ons nou met Terina Wenzel de Tooy, die nasionale direkteur van die Nasionale Raad vir en van mense met gestremdhede, en met Dr. Moses Semelane, die direkteur vir inklusiewe onderwys aan die Departement vir Basiese Onderwys. And thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. Dr. Semelane, in light of stakeholder engagement, surely it is unacceptable for a Department of Education, either in the Eastern Cape or nationally, not to respond and engage with the concerns of students who they meant to serve and their parents.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I think I would agree with that it's always important that we engage with all our stakeholders whenever issues are raised to the attention, particularly to the attention of the minister. And in this case, the situation at Vukohambe has been raised to the attention of the minister and has been receiving attention. Whereby, as a department, we've been engaging the provincial department, because it needs to be understood that schools are actually a competence of provincial departments of education. So as a national department, we develop policy, we provide guidelines, we provide legislative framework in terms of how education needs to be provided for all children, actually, regardless of whatever circumstances they are surrounded with. So in this case, we have been in constant communication with the provincial department, and we've been assured that the matter is being addressed. So my counterparts at the province are actually doing the best they can to arrest the situation and to bring it to normalcy, because it is quite unacceptable, especially if it has to happen with children with disabilities. Exactly. Because it's a double bind, whichever way you look at it. Any decision that is not supporting and lifting the quality of education for children with disabilities or children with special needs, it's actually, it can't be acceptable because they have been vulnerable and they have been marginalized for all sorts of reasons. So it's about time that we put children first. I'm going to speak to that in a moment, Dr. Semelane, but is that, the incident that we've seen with Karen and the Vukohambe school, is that really a credible reflection, a snapshot of what's happening nationally?
I wouldn't say nationally. There's some provinces where it's much better than others. And one would like to single out Limpopo province as a province where we have never been asked to come and get involved and try and resolve anything, not with parents, children, unions, anything of that nature, or just asked to come and sort out some or other mess and engage on the school's behalf with the education department. It seems as if it's working well in Limpopo, as an example. schools that are brought to our attention often with a variety of issues.
Can you elaborate on that, Torina?
Yeah, sure. For example, KwaZulu-Natal, there's 2 schools that we constantly get told that children are not treated very well in the hostels. Not that they're left alone like in this case, but where they're really maltreated, and some of the parents has actually gone as far as to put videos in and have given that to the education department, and community has become involved to try and see what they can do, and they've got the proof. So that is a very bad one, obviously. I don't know what is worse. And then in Gauteng, I would say there's a lot of circumstances that leads to schools contacting us for support, because in some instances it's really fantastic at the schools, there's absolutely no problem, and then you get in the same province problems that you can't even begin to try and understand how they happen. So it seems as if it's not something that we can just put in front of the education department. I think the unions play a very big role, and we feel that unions and their members and even the department should understand that when it comes to people with disabilities that are vulnerable, that their services are essential. And I know there's a whole process to get a service declared an essential service. But what is happening is really something which must let the nation stand up and look at it and do something. And that's why we're so happy that you are placing focus on that. Another 2 provinces besides Gauteng and Eastern Cape is also, and I mentioned the KwaZulu-Natal, is definitely the Northern Cape. It is very bad in the Northern Cape. There are really a lot of discrimination against children with disabilities. A lot of kids with disabilities not allowed in schools, although that it is policy of the department that the child must have the right to go to the school as close as possible to the child and to the parents. And sometimes there's not enough special schools. Obviously. I'm using the word special schools. It's actually an old term, but for the purpose of the discussion, it's not that we'd have got absolutely nothing against children with disabilities in regular or mainstream schools. In fact, it's very positive. But because there's a large number of children who are in special schools because mainstream schools can't take them, it's a vicious circle. So children who are in special schools obviously sometimes belong in mainstream schools, and then there's a large component of kids who are not in any school.
So I'm going to assume that the department is aware of some of these schools, but what in terms of the existing policy has been done, either in terms of monitoring or evaluating and acting upon them so that they get in line with what you envisage?
We've put policies in place. One of the policies that is really applicable in this case in terms of dealing with waiting list children who are not in school, it's the policy that we call the screening, identification, assessment and support. This is our mechanism that we've put in place for early identification and for purposes of early intervention. But the actual implementation started in 2015, and our target was that we should have reached all schools by 2019, because we've got this target that was set by the former state president, Mr. Jacob Zuma, who indicated that by 2021 there should be no child with a disability who is not receiving education. So therefore we've put plans in place and some mechanisms to make sure that we meet the deadline. But in terms of monitoring, we do that on a quarterly basis. We touch base with every province. We have got a framework that we call the National Strategy for Learner Attainment, NSLA, and that is where we've identified indicators for reporting, even including reporting on learners with disabilities and the kind of education that they receive. Things are improving. It might not look like it when there are situations like this on the ground, but basically we are making progress in this regard.
Let's talk about the progress that we have made and where the challenges still lay. After the break, we'll do that. Bly ingeskakel. Net hierna sit ons die gesprek voort. Moenie weggaan nie. Welkom terug by Fokus. Ons praat vanaand oor die probleme by skole vir leerders met gestremthede. Ons gaste is Terina Wenzel de Toey, die nasionale direkteur van die Nasionale Raad vir en van mense met gestremthede, en met Dr. Moses Semelani, die direkteur vir inklusiewe onderwys aan die departement vir basiese onderwys. So Dr. Semelani said there's progress has been made. So highlight two areas where we can surely say that we have made progress, and areas that we have no idea where we're going.
That's good. Some balance. I think if we can mention the fact that there's much more of an awareness in the fact that schools that are not actually even geared for children with disabilities are making an effort and are trying to take kids, and sometimes it's very detrimental because they just simply don't know how, and then it takes long for them to know where they can get assistance. But there's definitely a willingness, and there's some success stories in that regard. There's one beautiful success story in Tshwane, where there's a school where the school actually decided they want to have 2/3 of kids with disabilities and 1/3 not.
Integration.
And there's good integration, and it's really working well.
That's quite promising, particularly if we're talking about that we want a situation where there is integration and that the education that they receive at these schools is on par with what children at mainstream schools without disability receives.
I would say yes, because we've done a lot of curriculum development actually lately. From next year, we are actually introducing 26 subjects, which we call technical occupational subjects. These are subjects that are part of a 3-stream model where we are diversifying our curriculum offerings, and the introduction of this curriculum is actually going to start in our schools of skill, which are special schools, as it were, and it's also going to be rolled out even in mainstream school, the same curriculum, because we want to bridge the gap and try to avoid a lot of stigmatization. But also in terms of access to education, we have provided guidance to all provincial departments to make sure that at least there is a unit that is developed for children with autism, especially those on the lower end of the spectrum of autism. So almost every school in the country, a special school, has got a wing that has opened up for children with autism. So these are some of the strides that we are making, and of course, we are implementing a policy as well as a learning program for children with severe to profound intellectual disability, for which government has put a lump sum of about 649 million rand up to 2021. This is a program through which we are mobilizing all children with disabilities who are out of school to make sure that we provide them with education, and we've got a learning program that is already approved and ready for implementation, and we've started with the implementation this year. So there are quite a few areas that we've strengthened. Maybe one other important development is that as basic education, we've developed guidelines for resourcing an inclusive education system. In this case, we are trying to manage the disparities across provincial departments in terms of resourcing the implementation of the inclusive education policy and try to standardize the resourcing, because there are huge disparities. It's a matter of those provinces that have, like you'd count Western Cape, you'd count Gauteng, but most of our rural provinces are actually struggling to resource the implementation of inclusive education. And that goes, and those guidelines even talk to how hostels, even in special schools, need to be resourced by human resource to try and norm the environment, so that it's not only the provinces that have versus those that don't have. We are trying to level the playing field. So a lot of development is actually coming.
I'm impressed, because it seems like there's a lot of policy in place. There seems to be development. But to what extent is there engagement, is there inclusivity of children and adults with disability? What happens after school? How involved is the public sector, for example, or private sector in either sustaining that education, employing them so that they can be viable as anybody else without a disability to make a living? So it's wonderful to have all these policies, but so what? What happens after that?
Well, the very reason why we've embarked on the diversification of learning pathways is precisely to address the issue of the high dropout rate, because what we've noticed as basic education is that especially children with special needs, most of them drop out of school at the end of grade 9 and they've got nowhere to go.
Yes.
So now with this curriculum, the curriculum offerings that we have introduced, they are going to come with a qualification at NQF level 1, which is at the end of grade 9, so that those who may opt to look for work, they will be having a certificate that will recognize the kind of skills that they would have acquired, so that they can move to a world of work, and some of them can even become assistant artisans. And that's the direction to which we are going. By diversifying our learning pathways, as it were.
So if there was one area, Tarina, that you would want Dr. Simelane and his department to focus on starting tomorrow?
Maybe on a multidisciplinary situation level. If we look at assistive devices, for example, there are many schools where children with disabilities are only receiving one hearing aid instead of two, which is then quite a challenge, because you need to have two to properly function and to learn to the maximum of your potential. More on the physical disability side, as far as wheelchairs are concerned, there's many schools where kids have a wheelchair which the school sourced somewhere, or an organization gave it to them, or a sponsor, and it then belongs to the school. And sometimes, obviously, it belongs to the child because the donor said that, but it stays at the school. It doesn't go home. So then the kids are quite independent when they are at home. You can't just listen
at school and not have engagement or a life at home.
Yeah, then you get home and the kids are crawling or just lying, and then when they get to school, then they've got a wheelchair again. So what the school teaches them in terms of independence is then difficult. Yeah. And it's very often because of transport which is not accessible for wheelchairs, or simply because they're too scared that the wheelchairs will get broken, and then they will not have a wheelchair to let the child sit on in school. And then nappies is another very big thing which keeps children out of school. That's why we do a nappy run, and we raise nappies and give to a lot of people. Because if a child is wet, and it's not a dignified situation to be in, and kids can't go to school if they don't have nappies. It's such a simple thing.
What do we need to do more in terms of media to make this a national conversation? Because it seems to me, I mean, you're very excited and enthusiastic about what's been happening, but it seems like we're still in the shadows when we start talking about students with disabilities and their progress and the type of quality of life and dignified life that they lead.
No, that is absolutely the case. I don't know if one can also do more to tackle unions. I've got absolute respect for unions, and they have to be there, but I think what they also sometimes do to keep the education department busy, so that they can't focus on the things which they really should be doing. It's sometimes really mind-boggling to see how much time and effort from a department has to go in.
Tarina, thank you so much for coming in. Dr. Simelane, thank you for your time, sir. We appreciate it. Dis ongelukkig al vir vanaand. Ons tyd het ons ingehaal, maar onthou jou afspraak volgende Sondag aand om 6 net hier op SABC 2. Ons lees graag jou kommentaar. Stuur jou kommentaar, jou tweets en jou voorstelle aan ons. Jy kan dit vir ons e-pos na fokus@sabc.co.za. Jy kan gerus ook ons Facebook-blad besoek. Besoek Fokus by SABC op Twitter, dan ook Fokus ZA. Is maklik om ons daar te kry. En baie dankie vir die saamkyk. 'n Goeie week verder. Baie dankie aan ons gaste vir hulle deelname vanaand. Mooi bly.